Hey, everybody, just give us a quick second here. We're running a little late, so... Well, not a little late, a lot late. But you still love us, right? There we go. Okay, now that that's up, all I gotta do is swipe the link. And then we're good. And holy crap, there's a fourth person here. Oh, is that Shay? Shay be back, yo. What, you guys expected for that to work? I'm old.
Well, at least it didn't approach, like, Dave Coulier levels. I mean,
when you hit Dave... Cut it out. I could be that. I could be that corny. If I wanted to.
True.
Alright, let's see. I just need... Good lord, what did my daughter search for online?
Uh-oh.
She got a hold of the remote, and I caught her, like, after I'd done the dishes, and she was messing around with the TV remote, and she was in YouTube. And now I'm seeing, like, a lot of really weird things being recommended to me.
Yeah, in my mind, when I heard you ask that, I'm just like, isn't it, like, a good, like, 10 years or so too early to be asking that question?
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's not bad stuff. It's just like, why is this getting recommended?
Yeah, well, I've seen the same thing happen with my older brother's Netflix and YouTube accounts.
Yep. Okay.
I'm
Sorry,
glad
guys. We're just setting up the social medias, and then we'll be good. Alex, if you could do the same, that would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. Let's just grab the thumbnail I did before. People are going to be so mad that I'm just pasting this on. Okay. I should have worked this out earlier, but I didn't have time. I was too busy dealing with sick kids. Now, let's see. Which one should I use? Okay. All right. Shay's going to be so proud of me. I figured out how to Instagram.
Yay!
I'm not that bad of an old fart.
It's okay. Sometimes I don't get the hang of it either.
All right. This is probably not the right time to mention this, but really quick, Shay, do you want us to mention the news you had over the holidays, or do you want us to keep it quiet?
You can. Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay, because if I don't, my wife will kill me. So, all right, here we go. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News Reviews and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, January 31st, 2020. We've already made it 1 month, boys, and the world hasn't ended. This ought to be a really good thing. Oh, wait, there's another person right above me on the setup. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drak. I hope everybody's had an awesome week thus far. I know for me, it's been one of those weird deals where, and I just want to explain this really quick just to see if you guys have had this. Have you ever had that moment where, like, you set a goal for yourself and, like, for 3 weeks you are doing really, really good on it? Like, you're plowing it through and you're getting the habits set up, and then out of nowhere you just forgot to do what you were supposed to do that given day, and then you realize 2 days later, and then you're just like, ah, I can't believe I did that. That's happened to me this week, and it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating since I was doing so good. That's literally the cusp of the bad stuff that I've had to deal with this week. In other words, way better than 2019. And of course, let me go ahead and introduce my panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow awesome guys and gals in general. And if you guys aren't following their content, what the heck is wrong with you? I will beat you with this remote. I will beat you with it! And we will go ahead and start things off with Alex the Shadow Blazer, who has decided to join us from the Cthulian dimension and then come out of the bus stop as we have now made that GNRO canon. Alex, how you doing?
What is this bus stop? Is it the bus stop that Totoro stops at? Because I want to go to that bus stop.
It's whatever you want it to be.
It's kind of like there's this stuff that's like in the Nexus that's so many different dimensions. So basically, wherever you have any sort of supernatural public transit needs, well, it's there. You just got to make sure you get on the right one. I mean, if it looks like a cat bus, make sure it actually is the cat bus and not a different cat bus, because that's how you end up at a depot station at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And if the cat bus has tentacles, run away. Just run away.
Okay.
Just run away. And then you also just barely heard Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash, and whatever other movie magic he decides to come up with this given weekend. Romney, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. The week went by, well, without incident, for lack of a better term. Managed to finally sit down and see Knives Out, and I can see why it's getting the awards buzz that it's been garnering. So
okay.
It's, well, so far been a pretty decent week.
Very cool. And then, of course, we actually have a guest host tonight. Once again, joining us is Shay Therese. Shay, how you doing? It's been since, what, August? Since we had you on?
I think so, but I've been doing really good. No complaints so far for 2020.
And actually, we should probably mention this. The newly engaged Shay Therese, as you got a wonderful Christmas present.
I did. It was...
Did he plan it to be a Christmas present?
He did.
All right.
Turns out, yeah, he's been planning this since February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he officially gets a gold star in my opinion because I didn't do that.
Yeah, there were
It's official. He loves you more than I do my wife.
There were like over 40 people that knew about this, and they all kept it a secret.
That's impressive.
Wow, they looked you in the eye and they basically lied to you for like 7-8 months.
They did. And then, because he made sure that I didn't know a thing until, because we were in Disney World when it happened. So
yes, my wife especially
no
loves
idea.
that video. Whenever she gets a hold of my phone, she puts that on and she's like, oh, it's just so cute. So there you go. All right, so we have our panel here. What week's events in Geek do we have tonight to discuss? Well, I kind of feel bad tonight because our top story is very similar to a top story we had when we had Shay on last. Because around that time was when the Blizzard Blitzchung scandal happened. And unfortunately, Blizzard is back in the headlines. So recently this week, I think it was Tuesday, was the 28th, Warcraft 3 Reforged happened. Now, if people don't know what this is, it is a remake of Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos. It is pretty much, I believe, their highest-selling RTS game to date. I don't even think StarCraft 2 hit the numbers that Warcraft 3 did overall. And it was highly anticipated for 2 years after it was announced at BlizzCon 2018. And even I watched those panels and thought it was amazing, and I was looking forward to what they were going to do with it, because they were going to put in like a bunch of cinematic cutscenes for a lot of the pivotal events in the game. It was looking really awesome. I even pre-ordered it because I also love the World of Warcraft mount you could get for it. But, well, the impossible happened. As the game released, Blizzard apparently pulled a AAA game company. That's the best way I know how to explain it, because the game came out, and I can attest to this, as well as many games journalists, the 2002 version of the game looks better than the 2020 version of the game. So already, that didn't work out so well for them. On top of that, they actually didn't honor the promise that they had made at BlizzCon 2018 when they said that they were going to be putting in all of these cinematic cutscenes to be able to tell the most pivotal story segments, including the one they showed, which was basically the moment where the Paladin Arthas, or Prince Arthas, decides to cull the city of Strathholm to take care of the undead plague. It's a very pivotal moment for that character. We even got a cool cinematic for that. Guess what? That cinematic didn't even make it in the game. They actually changed it around, and it looks inferior to what they were promising. So, as you might imagine, guys, some people asked for refunds, myself included. And thankfully, I'm happy to say that me, as well as 3 other Blizzard friends of mine, did get their refunds. But apparently it is being said online that so many people asked for refunds that Blizzard pulled a Bethesda and shut down the floodgate. And now they are supposedly they are refusing to give out refunds anymore for Warcraft 3 Reforged. If you bought it, your sales are final. Let's cover this part because there's a second part of it that we also need to tangle really quick. Of what I just barely explained to you guys, what is your take on that?
Well, honestly, given Blizzard's track record over the past year, especially as Activision has kind of worked its tendrils into Blizzard as a company, suffice it to say, I wish I could be surprised, but honestly, I'm not.
No. I am a little bit, but I was able to get my frustrations out when they were very unfortunate. When I asked for my refund, they actually said, "You have been randomly selected for a survey." And I have no problem telling you guys. I wish I had the script up here, but I don't. I let loose on that survey. I didn't answer any of the questions that were multiple choice. I just let them know all of my frustrations that happened throughout the last year and a half. And well-deserved, might I add. So, like, that happened. Alex, what about you?
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, we've been seeing this from Blizzard for how long now? Just slowly, surely eroding away into being just corporate misers that only care about their bottom line and
Yeah, I want to say
caring about their products.
I want to say a lot of this crap started happening when Jeff Kaplan got overly involved with the Overwatch League. And it slowly went downhill from there. But I think Romney's right. It's safe to say Blizzard is just another division of Activision now. Like, there's no sense of individuality there. Shay, I'm not sure if you're a Blizzard fan or not, but just given what we've explained here, I mean, does this motivate you to go out and try out one of the games that literally defined Blizzard back in the early 2000s?
No.
I can't say I blame you.
Just based off of the past, two times we've mentioned Blizzard so far, they don't seem very great. I mean, I've definitely heard of Warcraft as well. I never played it, but of course, I saw the commercials for it all the time, but I never played the game. But at this point, I don't think I want to.
That's kind of the sad reality, is the people who made Warcraft 3 pretty much aren't even there anymore. It's just they're basically a shadow of their former selves. That's the sad reality here. But it gets worse, because one of the things that Blizzard was really well known for was being able to cater to the modding community. They really wanted people to make mods. In fact, they actually have good relationships with a lot of the people that make mods for StarCraft, World of Warcraft. I'm not sure if there are interface add-ons for Diablo, but they would interact very, very well with that. Unlike other AAA companies like Bethesda, who, if you try to do any kind of a mod in the game, they will ban you. Well, not so much anymore, because back in the past, they would allow for you to have 100% of the credit that you would have if you made a really, really good add-on. Well, then, unfortunately, a potential success happened under their wing, which was Defense of the Ancients, or might I actually state its actual term that everybody knows, Dota. Dota happened under their radar and became a fad within strangely enough, Warcraft 3. And thus has spawned games like League of Legends, has spawned games like Dota 2. And also, Blizzard tried to contend in the MOBA market with their own, with Heroes of the Storm. Well, they don't want that to happen again. So, instead of allowing for the mod creators to have 100% of the credit, they now get 0% of the credit, as it was done within their game, ergo, it's theirs. So if you created a really great mod, not yours. It's theirs. What part of this do you not understand, Shay? If you created that mod, it's not yours. It's theirs.
That's a rip-off.
Absolutely. It's almost like this is Fallout 76 or something. Oh, wait, you'd get banned for making mods in Fallout 76. Alex, thoughts?
Yeah, that's a bummer. I do have some mods for some of the games I play, and they're fun, and I like them.
Yeah.
And if I could make a really apt comparison of what this would remind me of, obviously I'm big in this with Sonic the Hedgehog, and well, there's a crap ton of Sonic fan games out there, ROM hacks and everything. So this would be to me like Sega now saying, okay, you make a Sonic ROM hack, it now becomes the property of Sega because of Sonic Mania, which thankfully they decided to capitalize on Mania and make that their own. But still, that's kind of what this would feel like to me. So I totally get where the people are kind of angry about that.
Oh yeah, the mod community is not happy with them. In fact, a lot of World of Warcraft modders and StarCraft modders have made their presence known with Blizzard. I know a lot of contacts within Blizzard have been called in the last few days, and they haven't really been able to gain much ground, but it does sound to me like, given the responses that they're giving these guys, Romney's right. It's Activision that's pulling the strings now. It's not like Blizzard is a shadow of what it formerly was, which is a crying shame. Like, you know, I hate to say this, Shay. Like, I would have loved to introduce you to a Blizzard that was as awesome as it was in the 90s and in the early 2000s when they were making games just surely out of passion and actually like taking their time with it. And now they're basically going to become another COD division under Activision. It's sad for me to say that. And it's also embarrassing considering how much of a Blizzard fan I am.
Yeah, it sounds like now at this point for Blizzard, it's all money more so than the games. And I feel like that's how a lot of companies go when they first start. They're all about their consumer and they're all about how passionate they are and just trying to put out the best product that they would enjoy as well as a player. But now, you know, as you grow bigger, now it's like, okay, well, just how much money can we make off of these people and not worrying about the product that they're putting out, because they know that someone within that community or a lot of people are probably going to eat it up and probably going to.
Well,
but now it's going to bite them in the butt because they have a lot of people that are asking for refunds, which is what they didn't account for.
Well, and speaking as a Blizzard fan, one of the reasons that I loved them as a company was because they put quality before quantity. They would literally, like, there was a joke or an inside joke with Blizzard fans, which was soon TM. That was basically every release date for every game they ever came out with. Because it would take forever to be able to get anything from them, but when you got it, it was gold. It ran really, really well up until about 2012 when Diablo 3 happened, which is, in my opinion, is when Activision first meddled with Blizzard, and because they insisted that Blizzard push out Diablo 3 and at least get it out onto the market. And from there on, like that's what I loved about them, but unfortunately, none of the people that are originally there that shared that vision are there anymore. Frank Pierce retired. Mike Morhaime is gone. The only one that's still there is J. Allen Brack, and at this point, I think he just sits in his chair just to be a figurehead as a CEO of the company. Because Bobby Kotick is running things, I'm thoroughly convinced. He's still CEO of Activision, right? And Alex has to go
mean-
and look for that for me. But
Take a look for you. Yeah. Let's see. Who
Bobby
is the CEO?
Kotick. It's like
Let's see.
Kotick.
Yeah, he's the CEO.
Yeah, Bobby Kotick, Mr. Cod, is running things over at Blizzard, and that is a sad day indeed. But yeah, final thoughts on this one before we get into the next top story that we have tonight. I'm just sad. I really am. Like, I was looking forward to that game and what they were going to try and do. It was going to be another nostalgic run for me, like when they released StarCraft Remastered. I was going to be able to play through that on a modern PC and be able to have some fun with it, and that's not what this was. It was very disappointing. It was very embarrassing, which is why I asked for my refund right there. I didn't see any reason to prolong the suffering, and and that's not going to be the last one either. Like, I have no plans right now to go and get Overwatch 2, which is basically Overwatch 2.0 is what it is. I've got one game that I'm playing on my PC, and that's World of Warcraft, and it's strictly for stress reasons. So at that point, once I can let that go, I'm done with Blizzard, and I'm at this point I'm also done talking the positivity with Blizzard as well. But yeah, final thoughts from you guys before we move on, as I'm certainly going to.
Honestly, there's not much else to really add. It's basically yet another AAA publisher is. Again, I have the theory that I'm guessing EA tricked either Bethesda or Blizzard to take the cursed box that made them the evil company. Just like, okay, Bethesda, you want it? And then Bethesda passed it on to Blizzard.
Yep, something like that. I mean, I can't think of another explanation. All right, well, I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story that we have. And I can't believe we're reporting on this. I really can't.
I can't either. Why'd you put it here?
Because it has to be stated, Alex. It has to.
It's because he wants to make me suffer.
Not just that. It's ass backwards is what it is.
It's just weird.
So Disney just barely announced that with a couple of new live-action remakes that they are going to be doing of their classic movies, one has taken the world by shock, not storm, as they have announced that they are going to be working on a live-action remake of Bambi.
Okay, but can we please not call it live action in the massive air quotes? It's just photorealistic CGI because it's exactly like The Lion King. There's no humans, ergo it's not live action.
Well, that's already
It's
like
not
one
real
of the...
animals.
I have
They're not
questions here,
puppets.
and one of them Alex just brought up eloquently. Is there a single human character in Bambi?
No.
I see a hunter? It's been so long
But
since
the
I watched
hunter is off
I
like
think-
in the distance.
think
You
Not
can't
even
even
Man
the
tell.
hunter's off screen. The hunter is off
Yeah.
screen.
Man
Okay.
is mentioned in the movie, but man's not really like a character
Yeah,
per se.
yeah.
That's
Until
about it.
now.
So how
Unless
is
they
this live
change it-
action?
Well, yeah, they're gonna make it like the Lion
The
King.
trees will be
basically.
real. That'll be what they'll say. It's like, well, the trees are.
That's fine, Shay, and I will say exactly what I said with The Lion King. It's not live action.
I didn't even like the Lion King. I fell asleep.
Okay, that's not
And
good
that's
for.
the only review I'll ever need.
I mean, the Lion King, it was pretty to look at. It's literally shot for shot, just like the animated version. I just couldn't deal with Beyonce being the voice of Nala. It was Beyonce. I was like, this.
Was
It's
she Nala?
Beyonce.
That's a bad pick.
Yeah.
She played adult Nala, and you already know it's her. And she's not a great actress, so I don't know why
Why
they
did-
chose her.
Marquee value.
Yeah,
Full
Marquis
stop.
Val.
Basically,
That's
I would have
exactly.
rather her just do the soundtrack.
Was
not-
Jay-Z involved at all with this movie?
He didn't rap in it, no.
Like, did they go to one of his companies or something like that? Because that explains to me how Beyonce got a casting role.
I mean,
Well-
I'm not shocked that they went with Beyonce.
I
Because
mean-
that was good. What got a lot of people to watch is
Well, yeah.
because a lot of people were fans of Beyonce. So
Yeah, because here's the thing.
Beyonce.
Like, they don't necessarily have to go through Jay-Z. Beyonce has more pull than Jay-Z.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually probably true. No,
Very true.
the only review that I ever saw was apparently people were protesting The Lion King getting on Disney Plus because of the fact that they, quote, straight-washed Scar. I can't even believe that's a word, but
I
it is a
didn't know
word.
That was a thing.
Well, it
Scar
kind
ever
of.
depicted as gay.
Okay,
Well,
let me explain
it's
this really
more-
quick
But he's
before we
a-
get into this. So the perception amongst the gay community is that Scar is gay. Because
did they
he's...
not see this? Did they not see the stage show? You know, that whole missing number that was cut from the film but added in the stage musical where he tries to seduce Nala?
Yes.
I mean, I looked at him like, did
If you
guys not
knew
watch
about the
musical?
extra scene where he got like creepy uncle on Nala, and
But also,
and then at that point you know he was a greedy son of a gun. So at that point, what they basically did in the movie is, I believe, instead of him just being a horrible lion, it's just that he was jealous of Mufasa getting Sarabi instead of him,
which is fine.
which is
But
which is
also-
therefore why he was straight washed, is because he was made to be heterosexual instead of supposedly, even though there's no evidence of it, homosexual.
He's
That's
just
why I'm
campy.
so
That's it.
confused.
Yes!
Again, the big,
Yes!
Again, the big refutation. The Broadway musical. Anyone who's thinking, oh, they sure watched him. Listen to the soundtrack of the frickin' musical. That pretty
Is
much
it just
refutes that.
Okay, I need to actually ask this. Is it just because Jeremy Irons played him? Like,
Well,
Jeremy Irons loves camp. So at that point, is the villain in Dungeons and Dragons gay because he played him?
well, here's where it kind of comes from. To kind of put on the armchair psychologist hat for a minute.
Cool. And then
It's
we'll finally
because-
get back to Bambi.
Well, it's
I'm
because
sorry.
there's this kind of association people have had. There's a documentary that kind of explains this much better than I could, called The Celluloid Closet. And for the longest time, the only form of gay representation that people ever got was through the overly flamboyant characters.
Yeah.
And so naturally, people made that association in a bid to find any semblance of representation. And problem is, that's kind of created a bit of a double-edged sword, because what a lot of people forget is, oh, those stereotypes were put in because it was the only way you could get it on there, and even then it was under the radar. Case in point, with the 1950s version of Ben-Hur, with the main villain playing it as though he was a gay lover of the main character Ben-Hur,
Yeah.
even though Charlton Heston vehemently denied that was a thing. The other actor later said, oh no, that's how I totally played it, just to piss off Charlton Heston.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
and
it's
I've
the
also
same-
seen people kind of blanket stuff with, like, particular actors. For example, I think it's Nathan Hale is the guy's name. Nathan Hale has come out as gay. And so at that
mean
point,
Nathan Lane.
What was that? Nathan Lane.
Nathan Lane.
Thank you. Nathan Lane has come out as gay. And for some reason, the gay community has basically blanketed any role that he has ever played and said, that guy's gay. Because
Yeah,
he's
it's the-
gay.
Well, yeah, there's the same thing happened with Ian McKellen as well. When people said, "Oh, well, Ian McKellen played Gandalf, therefore Gandalf is gay," which
Yeah.
anybody who is familiar with the legendarium of Middle Earth would basically say, Gandalf, there's no clear thing. Any sort of romantic inclination you would ascribe to Gandalf is from the Peter Jackson films.
Yeah.
None of that is in any part of the legendarium.
Yeah, and I think even Ian McKellen has said, like, no, that doesn't matter because of the description that Tolkien and Jackson gave him, which is
Yeah.
basically that he's above all of that.
Yeah, because that's how wizards work in Middle Earth. They literally are basically meant to be above.
Yeah,
all
they're
that
they're
stuff.
kind of like angels in a way, like they're ascended beings. So at that point, they are above all of that. In
Yeah,
fact,
Getting back on topic.
anyway, yeah.
I'm still confused regarding Scar. I just thought of Scar as just being uppity.
I see. One of the reasons I love
was
Scar
like-
so much is because Scar is just a horrible, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
person. He's just a horrible person. He's
Yeah,
greedy.
I was like, oh, as a kid, I was like, Scar is just like that uppity, like,
Yeah.
uncle you have that thinks they're above everybody and
Ah!
their nose is so high in the air that they'll drown if it rains. Like, that's literally Scar.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
that's how Jeremy Irons played him, and it
Yeah,
worked.
Yeah.
He's Claudius. That's basically his character. He's Claudius.
So I think it's
So
only
Bambi,
appropriate for us to
sorry.
get back to the problem at hand, which is the live action Bambi. So I think we've pretty much covered one question that I have is how on earth is this live action if you're going to have a CG Thumper, a CG Flower, a CG Bambi, a CG Bambi's mom? Like, all of the characters are animals, so how is this live action?
Trees.
I mean, Jungle
think it's
Book had more of a justification because at least you had one human character that you followed around.
I
Two,
think it's
technically,
because
if
of
you
the
count
fact that
Mowgli's
it's not gonna be the traditional hand-drawn animation that we've seen before,
Yeah.
like with Bambi, and it's not gonna be the like 3D aspect of animation that we saw with like Tangled or Frozen. So that's probably why they're saying it's
Yeah.
live action, because it looks more realistic compared to
Air quotes.
previous.
Yeah.
Looks more realistic compared to like previously how Bambi was done. But once again, why Bambi?
And
I mean,
so let me
they're probably just trying to appeal to other people.
Sure, but let me ask the other big question that I want to ask, because this happened in my generation. What the hell is wrong with you, Disney? You want to traumatize another bunch of 10-year-olds?
Okay, here is
That
the source
death
of.
did not traumatize me.
Well, here is the main.
Nor did it
crux
me, but
of
anyway.
my rant.
Yeah.
Like the main crux of the rant that I mentioned before we went on the air. This was actually part of a rant that was going to be a year-end vlog before I ran out of time. So I'm gonna try to condense it, but that is a good segue. For some reason, especially in recent history, Disney is afraid of letting characters stay dead. Case in point, Rise of Skywalker and Frozen 2, which had both had moments in which if characters actually stayed dead, the narrative would have actually been stronger. But no! We can't kill any.
We can't have casualties in war!
We can't have casualties in war. We can't have characters make noble sacrifices to actually, further the plot, because that hurts our merchandising thing. My worry is that they're basically going to wreck one of the key important moments of the original film, which is the death of Bambi's mom. Because I bet you Disney is going to find some way to have the mom be alive at the very end of the film, like they've done with every other film that they have put out over the past number of years, because for some reason, Disney is afraid to let death matter.
Which is
now,
funny, because they've had 2 movies that have dealt with loss and have dealt with grief. And I'm just like, okay, then if you let your characters stay dead, this would have lasting impact.
Yeah, and so that is my main concern, is that, they're going to traumatize a whole nother generation. No, I bet you they're going to play it safe. They're going to make the audience think she's dead, but then she's going to appear at the end of the film perfectly fine, because, of course, death doesn't matter in a Disney movie anymore.
I think they will still keep the death in. And the main reason why I say that is because of the Lion King. Because when you had Mufasa's death, that was a huge impact, because it caused the story once again to keep going with Simba having to
Oh
go
wow,
on
they
a
actually
road
let
and,
Mufasa
grow
stay
up.
dead?
They
I haven't
let
seen it.
Mufasa stay dead. They literally
All right.
followed it script for script of the originals. That's why I feel like Mufasa's death, at least to me, trumped Bambi's mom's death, because of the fact you did have Simba calling his dad's name and trying to wake him up, which was detrimental, because you're like, oh man, that kind of hurt. But they kept that in.
Well,
So it's I feel like they'll do the same with Bambi, because that's a pivotal moment in it. And
I just need to get this out really fast, and sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's hard it's hard for me to be able to give you a worthwhile deal, because Bambi's mom didn't really affect me as a child. Optimus Prime did.
Yeah.
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 But here's to kind of address.
Better.
Yeah, to kind of address the comparison between Mufasa's death and Bambi's death, both films are kind of approaching it from different angles. With The Lion King, it's going for kind of a more Shakespearean tragedy sort of it, where not only does Simba see Mufasa die, he thinks it's his fault. That's what Scar uses to send him away.
Yeah.
Whereas Bambi is more or less a movie about Bambi, a deer, kind of trying to understand how nature works, kind of finding his place in it. It's kind of appealing to sort of a different sense of, okay, well, you've got one death in The Lion King that's basically a tool of emotional manipulation orchestrated by Scar, whereas in Bambi, it's treated as more of, this is a thing we have to deal with that we can't control. And I worry Disney is not going to honor that intention.
No.
Because they've undermined this sort of thing before, as seen with other live-action remakes, The Disaster that was their take on Beauty and the Beast.
I like that, but that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast.
Well,
I
Those
just
were
like
her
that they
better
added
ones.
more lore to the Beast. So
yeah, but there was also a case, and I highly recommend looking at Lindsay Ellis's video essay kind of discussing it, where Disney felt the need to address criticisms of the film that weren't actually there. They did the same thing with Aladdin, because
Sure.
and it's not even because, oh, there's actual problems that haven't aged well with the films. It's like, oh, if we put this in these movies, it'll make it more money because we'll be seen as #progressive,
yeah.
which it's disingenuous. That's the thing that just irritates me, is that if you're gonna actually address these parts of the story and actually do something about it, fine, just actually do your due diligence. Don't do just this surface level crap that shows that it basically shows you're doing it for arbitrary brownie points.
But
I mean,
yeah. getting back to the moment at hand, like we do have a problem. Are they actually going to let that trigger be pulled? Pardon the pun, but
I feel like they will.
okay.
They will, because I feel like they run the risk of angering more people who have seen the animated version of Bambi and making them angry and upset than people who are potentially taking their kids in to go see it, to see this one moment happen that's off screen and you don't actually see it, when there's worse things on TV that I'm sure their kids have actually watched that might show more violence.
Yeah, but
And if you're taking your child to go see Bambi, this live action one, and if this does happen, then it can be a conversation starter if your child does get upset. But it's also like, I'm sure your child might have seen other where a character has been done in.
I mean,
Whether
especially especially when you consider the perspective. Like, I mean, if they were to actually do it justice, this would be a good time to address it, considering the levels of gun violence that have happened recently, given that it's a perspective of a child running while their parent tries to ward off the hunter. Like, if in the right hands, that could be very powerful. I just don't have faith that Disney is going to actually take that risk.
No, and I can already tell you, here's why I'm a little worried about them taking that risk, because I don't know if you guys noticed in the article, they've got the screenplay writers already, and so let me just go ahead and read them off to you, and you tell me whether or not you're a little worried. So the first one is Geneva Robertson Dwyer, who helped with the screenplay for Captain Marvel, as well as Tomb Raider, the rebooted Tomb Raider. And then we also have Lindsay Beer, who did the screenplays for Sierra Burgess as a Loser and Chaos Walking. I can already tell you, just given Geneva, I'm a little worried, because I know that Captain Marvel went through a few mandated rewrites, so that tells me that she probably will cave to Disney. And Tomb Raider, well, that needed a few more rewrites.
Honestly, given that I haven't seen any of the movies listed, I can't really comment to their writing skill, because I haven't seen any of them. I've heard your rant about Tomb Raider since I overheard it on a day we were recording.
He was literally downstairs while we were recording it, and he could hear me.
That's how fired up he got.
I heard Tomb Raider was pretty bad.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, one of the worries that you have with Bambi not taking death seriously, Tomb Raider didn't take death seriously.
I didn't see it. My dad saw it. My dad's only complaint with that was that it was too dark. He couldn't see anything.
That
like,
too.
I couldn't see anything. That was my dad's issue.
My main problem with the movie is that one of the reasons that Lara is a powerful character is because her father's dead, and because she has to basically work off of his memory and be as strong as him. Well, they literally renege that as we find out that Lara's dad has been on the island that she winds up on, and he's been living there for like the last 20 years. And he's just like, oh, well, then, okay, you took all of the foundation that Lara had as a character, and you got rid of that. Now at that point, what do you have to work with? And unfortunately, the movie did not go out of its way to build in another foundation for Lara to build off of. So that's why you're not getting a sequel, boys and girls.
Yeah. I don't know. When it comes to to Bambi, it's strange for me to think that something as the death of Bambi's mom, which happens off screen, like you just hear the gunshot, you don't actually see it happen, would potentially be something getting removed. Whereas you have another movie that also deals with death and also deals with loss of a main character who you get attached to at the beginning of the movie because that's the main character's dad and who teaches him a life lesson, teaches him a lesson and stuff like that, and is like basically teaching his son, and then you have his death happen on screen. You see it happen, and they keep it. I don't know. It's to me, it's backwards, just a little bit.
Okay, I gotta read this to you guys. So a friend of mine just barely texted me and going, "This just in: Joe Rogan has been cast as the Hunter in the live-action Bambi remake."
The sad part is, I can see that sort of thing happening.
Oh my
in the wrong
gosh!
hands.
Well, they do have Chris
This
Pratt.
week they'll give the Hunter line because the Hunter has no speaking line.
Well,
It's all right.
here's
Joe
what I
won't
see
mind.
happening. Here's what I see happening. That's probably going to be a Saturday Night Live sketch. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they've made fun of Disney. I mean, there was the animated sketch they did that basically like, oh, Titanic, if it was animated by Disney.
Yeah.
And, like the animation and everything, it's pretty dang convincing. They actually went the extra mile, but
Okay,
yeah.
I have to address our live chat for just a second. Guys, I understand. Beauty and the Beast had problems. I get that from an analytical standpoint. But to me, at least what they did was somewhat more entertaining than what the animated movie did for me. So, I get your problems. Yes, it has those problems. I get that. I walked away liking the live action version more. I can't explain it other than that. But that being said, we actually do have a cool question in the chat for it. Do we think that we're being too hard on screenwriters and producers of films?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Kind of depends on the movie.
Depends on the movie, depends on their track record and their body of work. It's very much one of those case-by-case bases that you have to take with these things. And so, for example, say we were to hear about an adaptation of, off the top of my head, say we were to hear about a live-action adaptation of Devil May Cry, and then we learned that it's being produced by Uwe Boll. Naturally, we would all have some misgivings.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I would actually like to point out in regards to that, because this is being brought up by our live chat here at YouTube. By the way, welcome, live chat. We're very happy to have you. Here's my deal with that question. Do I think we're being too hard on them? No, I don't. And the main reason I don't think so is because welcome to the big leagues. This is what they've been working so hard to get to, is be able to do these big production screenplays and be able to show what they can do. And if you can't take the pressure, well, get out of the damn kitchen. Is kind of my viewpoint. And my perfect example of this being is Ghostbusters 2016. Is, in my personal opinion, the writers could not take any of the criticism that was being doled out to them on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of that, and they literally took it to heart, and it's very clear in that movie they did. Because they literally set aside time in their script to make fun of the said internet people that made fun of them. And I'm not saying, like, look, did a lot of cruel things get said with that movie? Absolutely. But what should have happened is the writers should have turned off their phones and worked on it regardless, because that would have been the big person thing to do. And unfortunately, they decided to make fun of the people that were criticizing them, not taking their constructive criticism and applying it. And so at that point, you know, I hate to be the guy here, but if you want to be able to get these big roles, you have to prove that you can write on that level. And unfortunately, so in Geneva's case, Tomb Raider, not a good highlight in my mind. Captain Marvel, 50-50. It had some good elements, but it also had some weird plot holes that now kind of make the MCU not work. So at that point, I have issues with that. I can't really speak on Lindsay, but the same premise kind of applies. Is if you want to write at the big leagues, you have to be worthwhile to get to the big leagues. So do I think I'm being hard? Not really. Welcome to real life.
Yeah,
I think it depends on the fan.
What was that, Shay?
I think it depends on the fandom. I feel like some fandoms are more tougher on writers than others because they want to
Sure.
see whatever the adaptation is done right or done correct, and or they want to see it done just in a good sense at least. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's also a huge testament now to like the time period that we're living in, because if you did this like 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't be hearing a whole lot about the writers or having a lot of people have pushback on who's the writer of it, because there wasn't really a huge thing on the internet now. But now, since you have things like Twitter and Instagram, like everyone's going after them.
Well,
And I feel like now that plays a big role. But it also shows, though, with the fact a lot of the times that fans are tough on the writer, that we see stuff get done correctly. And a huge like example of that is Sonic. Like fans uproared about that animation and got it changed
sure.
because they were like, we're not gonna, it's not, and they changed it and pushed back the release. And
Can I
now it's
can I
coming
interject
out.
one quick thing in there though, Shay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that you, because I agree with you. I think you're making a lot of really great points. Is a good writer can be able to properly manage all of that, take a lot of that heat, and is stronger for doing so. Because in some cases, is the fandom responsible for a lot of this stuff? Yes and no, because the bottom line is there's always going to be an extreme element within the fandom that don't necessarily want what everybody else wants. They want what they want. Okay?
Yeah.
So, for example, with Sonic, like, you know that there's at least 5 guys that still don't like the design of Sonic because it doesn't match their perfect view of Sonic. And and what I'm basically saying is you aren't going to appease them. And so the good writers will know that they can't, and they will do their absolute best. This is one of those times where I actually want to compliment George Lucas when he was doing the prequels, where he basically sealed off the set. He did not allow for stuff to get out because he wanted the focus to be on the films. Now, granted, however you look at those films, that was a good approach because at that point, you had hardcore Star Wars fans who could get up in George's face, and that was his answer to it, and it was a good answer.
Yeah.
And to
It's
add
also
to,
the studios too. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to what Shay mentioned regarding like adaptation, this is something I remember mentioning when I went to see The Fault in Our Stars, because I'd read the novel before going in, where you have people who are concerned with how the writers are handling it, where not only do they necessarily want a good adaptation, they want it to match their own mental picture from when they were experiencing the adaptation. But as anybody can recall, if they've seen the second Neverending Story movie, books change every time you read them. What one person imagines when reading one scene is going to be completely different with another person who reads the same book. And that's another thing, that there's kind of this lack of self-awareness. There are some people who take it too far. Some people, I mean, look no further than, well, the fervor around the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, where some people do take it a little too far because they lack that self-awareness of, okay, are you actually criticizing the script because of an actual flaw or because it clashes with what you perceive to be a perfect version of the film? And so sometimes people do need to take that step back and learn to kind of separate their own ego and emotions from discussions of technical merit. And so in terms of whether or not we're being hard on them, again, it's a case-by-case basis. If you've got people who are at least willing to show respect to the source material but not be beholden to it, but are at least saying, hey, there's something here, here's what we want to do with it, and we're actually going to commit to it and have faith in our idea, that's better than basically like what we saw with Ghostbusters, where they let the real world seep in and basically derail and lose faith in their own story.
So I kind of want to also address this in the chat, and I promise we will, because there's not really a whole lot to go off of the live action Bambi aside from the rants that we've already kind of had. But so we're getting kind of asked, like, from one of the people in our chat, Robin's Review World, y'all don't like any films, and we've been following this channel for a while. Well, name one film that you all have liked other than the Joker in the last 2 years. Well, I haven't seen Joker, so I can't say that. But it depends on the type of film that you're asking about. Because at that point, okay, you want films in the last 2 years that I've liked. Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, If you want good writing, I would say that Christopher Robin had great writing in it.
That was a really good movie.
That was a good movie.
I can give a dozen examples. I would say Dragon Ball Super Broly, considering that they had to reconstruct Broly from the ground up. That was good writing in there. And that was with a hardcore fan base that sometimes Toriyama doesn't appease. Like, here's the thing. This is like the perfect example here. Toriyama is having to deal with the hardcore fan base that doesn't like Dragon Ball Minus. And guess what? He wanted to incorporate elements from Dragon Ball Minus to rewrite canon. And it worked.
Well, and to kind of add to that discussion of like films from the past couple of years, I mean, at the top of the show, I mentioned Knives Out is actually a pretty well-written, well-constructed film.
Yeah.
And
That was really good.
Having seen Joker, I wouldn't say I would necessarily consider it a great film, but it is an engaging film. And at least it goes back to that same point with Joker. They had faith in the story they were wanting to tell and actually committed to that vision. And it really shows. Rather than letting fan backlash or preconceived notions about it actually shape it, they just went, this is what we're doing, full steam ahead.
Yeah.
And in terms of other films that I've seen that may have questionable writing that I still enjoy, Ip Man 4 is another good example of that. And that is a film that is very heavily critical and paints the United States as a racist country.
Yeah. I could name off a bunch of stuff, but a majority of the stuff that you would ask, like, that has been in the theaters that I have seen has been, like, superhero stuff. If you want to ask other films that I've seen in the last 2 years that maybe aren't from the last 2 years, The Finest Hours with Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill. I loved how that was written as a biopic, and it gave a really great perspective on how London was being shaped during that time in World War II. I love the writing of that. There's tons of examples that I could give you that I do love the writing on it.
I actually really liked, I know a lot of people didn't enjoy it very much, but I actually enjoyed the live action of Aladdin. And I know a lot of people weren't very happy with it, but I thought it was a pretty good movie. I mean, I also saw Joker as well. I enjoyed Joker. Joker reminded me a lot of Killmonger from Black Panther. So that for me how I kind of felt about it. So I enjoyed it. Besides superhero movies, other movies that I enjoyed, I just recently saw Bad Boys for Life. That was really good. I really enjoyed that movie. I saw Frozen 2. I actually kind of enjoyed it, and I was someone that really so I enjoyed it.
I was going to say, don't spoil it, because we need to still go watch that for our kids.
Oh, don't worry.
So.
I won't spoil it.
All right.
I thought it was very cute, though. And I actually enjoyed Men in Black International, and a lot of people also didn't like that movie.
I want to see that.
I thought it was good, and I also enjoyed the first three Men in Black films with Will. Like, I enjoyed those ones, which made me want to go see this one, and I thought it was a great take to kind of start the series over or continue it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And another example of a film that most people seem to hate, yet I seem to be the only one that actually likes it, Dark Phoenix. I mean, I've gone on record.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so.
I saw it, and
I mean, like, the chat will be very happy that the next film that I actually have up on the docket when me and Andrea can get around to it is Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I'm excited to watch.
That's so good.
I'm so excited to watch that because my chat has literally told me, you cannot watch Godzilla vs. Kong until you have seen King of the Monsters and you've seen Kong Skull Island. And so at that point, it's like, challenge accepted. I'll do it. Because I'm a big Godzilla fan. I'm a big kaiju fan.
Yeah, and so to kind of address the point Robin's review world basically is bringing, like, so no sympathy for anyone who have to write screenplays for super fans. That's the thing. They're not writing for super fans. They're writing for regular people who are deciding whether or not to go see a movie.
Yeah, and we're not picking on you, Robin. It's simply that's why I pointed out, like, there are extremes in any fandom you're never going to appease. It's never going to happen.
Nope. Again, look at the sequel trilogy and all the crap that happened with both The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
I mean, for crying out loud, this is the perfect example. If they ever did a live-action remake of Hey Arnold, there is a portion of the fans that would insist that the actor's head be shaped like a football.
Which is weird. and terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave Alita big eyes for Alita Battle
They
Angel.
did.
Actually, now that
guess-
I think about it, I kind of wish I could take that back because that's a weird
Yeah.
image in my head too.
Well,
I guess it's
here's
conceivable if we get a live action Hey Arnold, we'll get a live action football headed Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
here's a better example, and it is something that may come up in a future episode of Geek News, but consider Silent Hill, the live-action film adaptations. And this was something that I made an argument when I reviewed the film's sequel, Silent Hill Revelation, which again, a flawed film, but again, also had faith in its own story, as flawed as it is. Even if you were to actually make a shot-for-shot recreation of the very original PlayStation game with basically matching costumes, matching settings, if you were to literally recreate a full-on long play as a live-action film of Silent Hill, people would still find a reason to complain.
Yeah. There will always be somebody to complain with. It's just, unfortunately, the writers basically have to kind of tell the story that they want to tell, as well as be able to kind of take the criticism that's being made, take the constructive stuff out of it, and then I'm not saying they ignore the super fans. They don't. They try to cater to them as much as possible. But unfortunately, you can only do so much. And
Yeah,
and so at that point, like, and Alex is actually right. He put it in the chat as well. Sometimes it's not even the writer's fault. Sometimes the director's vision is off.
Yeah, I think
sorry.
the writers the writers seem to have to appease two different people. They
Yeah.
have to appease the fans of this original adaptation, but also somehow try and pull people in who have never seen this in their life. And the only example I can really give is like the Harry Potter films. There's a lot
Yeah.
of people I know who have never read the books, but have only seen the movies. And for me, as someone that's both read the books and has watched the films, and I enjoy the films as well,
Yeah.
but there's times I watch the movies and they took so much stuff out. They missed out on this character or this moment.
Yeah.
But then I realized they, number one, had to cut down a book that's 700 pages into a 2.5 hour movie. And they had to appease people who had never seen this series in their life and keep them
Exactly.
engaged and keep
Yep.
watching and somehow have them follow along through the journey of one character. And I'm like, I get it. And sometimes it's just the studio. The studio's like, we cannot have you do this. We need you to do. We need you to have this a certain way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
the writers like, I gotta appease 3-4 different people, and not everybody's gonna be 100% happy.
Yeah, I remember at the very first Salt Lake Comic-Con when there was a panel conducted by Jared Black, who was the author of the authorized Ender Companion, and this was in the lead-up to the film adaptation of Ender's Game, and he explained a conversation he had with Orson Scott Card regarding the adaptation. Again, set aside opinions any of us may have about Orson Scott Card, the person. What was discussed is pretty apt, and Jared Black went on to say, books can do what books can do, movies can do what movies can do. If you're going to Ender's Game expecting something that's exactly like the book, you're going to be disappointed. However, if you go in expecting a fun action movie with characters that you're familiar with, then you'll be more satisfied.
Yeah, and just to kind of put this is going to be kind of the ending note on the live action Bambi, because whatever happens, we'll obviously be reporting on it. But
And it's going to be on Disney Plus, so most of us won't see
the
it.
other thing to also, yeah, sorry, all the people who protested the Lion King. The Lion King's up on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe I'll watch it just to piss you off.
Or just watch Lady and the Tramp, because that's on there too.
Oh,
Like,
Yeah, that's true.
That's a thing.
But the last thing that I kind of want to point out is you're also talking to 4 people who get that struggle, that have to deal with that struggle, because we're writing our own material. Like even Shay, to some extent, you're running a blog as well as you are writing, because you just barely started a whole new segment on your channel called Nerd News, which means you have to actually go sift through the stories like we do and determine, okay, what can I make work? What can I make work? So this is a struggle that we deal with too. And sometimes you hit and sometimes you miss.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of toot my own horn here, you're talking to someone who has been actively writing and rewriting a pilot script for the past 5 years and actively submitting to screenwriting competitions, some with varying degrees of success. So, yeah, I do know the struggle, because it's almost like I've been studying how to make films for almost my entire life.
Dude, one of Alex's big accomplishments, hopefully you're not going to get mad if I mention this treatment, are
No,
you?
go ahead.
No. Alex worked on an anime treatment for Chrono Trigger. And I, as being one of the people
Well, let's
that
be clear,
read it,
It's not like official or anything. It's
No.
my own my own personal spec script. Is
No,
more
but here's the
appropriate
thing:
for
is
it
like,
as.
given my perception of it when he gave me a copy and asked me to read it, is that, I mean, granted there are a couple of things that maybe need to be tweaked a little bit, but he did a good job of trying to put Chrono Trigger into, at least in my opinion, some kind of an episodic format. That would make sense. So at that point, all you'd need to do is like, and probably even you would agree, Alex, like a couple more treatments, and you'd have it nailed.
Oh yeah, because like I found like that old copy I gave to you like some time ago when I was at your house, and I read it. I'm like, whoa, what was I thinking? So
Yeah.
like, yeah, even I could say like, yeah, I could probably go back and rewrite that and polish it up some more. Because
Exactly.
I've definitely learned a lot more since I wrote that in like 2007 was like when I first wrote that. So yeah, even I agree there.
Yep.
Yeah, to quote Jake the dog, being bad at something is the first step towards being sort of good at something.
Pretty much. All right, so let's go ahead and move on into the next story. Wow, Bambi got deep. Can I just point that out? Bambi got
Yeah,
deep.
that's deep.
Yeah, that should have been the episode title. Bambi gets deep.
That might be the RSS title. Bambi gets deep.
Bambi gets deep.
And then people will be like,
That sounds
is that
kind
a
of weird.
yeah? Is that some kind of sexual connotation? No.
But
That's
that's
why
the thing.
I'm like-
It sounds weird, but it gets them to click on the episode.
It does, like, but then at that point,
But
I'll get
strange
complaints about
people are
putting up
clicking on
clickbait.
Well, that's the internet. That's how you got to
Yep.
do it now.
So
Maybe.
speaking of other stuff that probably shouldn't happen, so it's been recently announced, I believe by Hasbro, that Paramount actually announced it, is that they are developing 2 new Transformers films. Now, here's the thing. They have a little bit of momentum going for them with the last release, Bumblebee. Bumblebee did fairly well, so at that point it does make sense to be able to pump out at least one more movie. And they've actually stated that one of them is looking to be either like a Bumblebee-like movie or maybe even a sequel to Bumblebee, so like setting things a little bit further in time for Bumblebee's trip on Earth. It's just the other one that gets me really, really turning my head, as they have commissioned to have a scripted treatment done for Beast Wars Transformers. Now, guys, I'm a G1 fan. I am. I like G1. I grew up with G1. But if you, gun to my head, had to ask me, like, what I'm a true fan of in the Transformers fandom, Beast Wars would be up there. It probably would be the top, because of a lot of the writing that happened in that series. I don't even think it was accidental. They actually added a lot of weight that the G1 series wasn't allowed to do.
Yeah, I remember the famous story that often gets told is that they kept coming with new characters faster than they could actually make toys,
Yep.
which is rare for, TV shows that are effectively commercials for their toy line.
Dude, they got in trouble because they actually showed characters getting hit by lasers. All right? That was one thing, like in the 1980s, everybody wonders why all the Autobots and Decepticons were horrible shots. You couldn't do that. Like, even G.I. Joe, they were horrible shots. You couldn't actually show on camera that somebody got hit by someone who fired a laser.
I mean, look at what happened to the Spider-Man 90s series and all the BS that they had to do with that.
Dude, you think that, like, it was just stormtroopers that were horrible aims? No, that's one of the jokes that I have about the 90s, is everybody was a horrible shot. But in Beast Wars in the 90s, with CG, like, this was one of the early CG series, they actually had impacts. They had robots blowing up. They had robots die. Like, literally die. Yeah, they were brought back, but let's take that out of the equation for a second. They actually had the impact of death in that show, and it worked. So at that point, I'm really worried about them touching Beast Wars. Because first of all, what are you going to do? Interject humans that don't exist?
I mean, on the one hand, I can see them doing that, but on the other hand, I can also see them just going the full CGI route and just be like, let's just cut the crap. If I were at Paramount, that would be the approach I would take. Like, okay, let's just cut the crap, just do it as full CGI. We're gonna have to do the effects anyway, so let's just stick with celebrity voices for the characters instead of actually having, Mark Wahlberg on screen for some reason.
I should probably explain something because I think I got Shay a little confused. There can't be human cast in Beast Wars. Beast Wars is actually set in a prehistoric Earth that even the Autobots haven't woken up to start up the G1 struggle. All right, so this is set in a place where you can't have human characters. In fact, there's very little wildlife there. Like the wildlife that they actually base their beast forms off of is kind of, at least it's personified as sparse. So
that sounds like it sounds like there's no way that they would be able to handle that.
I don't think they would, but
I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think of, I feel they would have to like really chop it up to make enjoyable for both fans and people who may not have ever seen it before.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they decide to invoke some sort of Tim Burton Planet of the Apes level twists or something, I don't really see it working.
No.
I mean, if they wanted to get some marquee value and actually have like people actors, I don't see them like actually having them on screen. I can see them maybe bringing in established actors for mocap. Like that I could see.
Yeah.
They go kind of the Avatar route and think, okay, well, let's get these famous celebrities and have them do motion capture. I mean, Andy Serkis as Megatron. I mean, I'd pay to see that, and I'm not even a Transformers
What's
fan.
really sad, too, is that I have a feeling a lot of Beast Wars fans would want returning actors to be able to reprise their roles in Beast Wars. So, like Scott McNeil to come back and play Rat Trap, Waspinator, and Dinobot, if those characters get featured, which I don't know if they're willing to do the mocap portion of it.
Yeah, because mocap and voice acting, although, yeah, people try to kind of lump it together, it is two different skill sets. It takes a lot to do motion capture acting as opposed to voice acting. Not that they're not, like, one is easier than the other, it's just a completely different skill set.
Not only that, but the live-action films, now that I think about it, they have a prehistory set. So how are you going to make this work then? Because we already know about the Dinobots that were, because of Transformers 4, that we know that those were there. So what? Are you going to base this thousands of years even before Beast Wars was based? There's a lot of problems here.
I mean, unless you do like the full-on reboot and basically say, oh, well, this is a new canon set in a new timeline.
If you did it as new canon, then you'd be fine.
I think that's the only way that they would make it work.
Now, I will say for the second movie, given like my opinion on it, if they did a sequel for Bumblebee, I'd be okay with it. I actually wouldn't have a problem. Bumblebee was pleasantly delightful for me to watch. I had some issues with it, but I liked it enough that I wouldn't mind another movie based on that. If you wanted to do that based off of another character, that would be, well, a little weird, because at that point, then you have to explain how another Autobot was there, but we didn't know about it.
Or alternately, you could go kind of the anti-hero out and focus on a lesser-known Decepticon. Maybe, oh, you had Bumblebee, who was kind of Optimus's right-hand man. Maybe then have the spin-off film be focused on Starscream.
What I'd actually like to see happen, and I've heard that it's been bounced around in Hollywood for a while, but somebody did a treatment for High Moon Studios' War for Cybertron and was actually able to condense it into a movie format. And if you did it with the G1 CG characters that you had at the beginning of Bumblebee, I'd pay to see that. Do War for Cybertron with those models and just have a CG movie all on Cybertron and trying to tell that story. I would love it.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, like, as much as some people like the human cast, as a hardcore Transformers fan, the human cast is never going to do it for me. I want to be able to see the character development with the robots, and Michael Bay wasn't interested in doing that. He was interested in having the wacky parents with the humping dog come out every 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, alternately, unless they decide to, like, mine some of the material from some of the Japanese animated Transformers stuff, maybe, if they're desperate. But even then...
You're talking Beast Wars 2nd, then.
Well, Beast Wars 2nd, but even if they were to do, like, a spin-off set with the Autobot designs, but do something like based on something like Armada, for example.
Maybe that might be another way to work it out, and you could set up for Beast Wars that way.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And again, multiverse stuff. Hasbro has done that sort of thing before with Transformers, and I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they just haven't decided to go for broke. So, like, okay, you know what? Let's just go completely insane. G.I. Joe Transformers crossover. We know people want to see it. We have comics we can pull from.
Well, they're
May as
still
well just-
they're still kind of 50-50 about their cinematic universe, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, they don't necessarily have to actually establish a cinematic universe. It could just be like, okay, we'll just make this movie just for the hell of it. If it does well, then yes, we'll make it a cinematic universe. Otherwise, it's a case of, and again, this is just probably the little kid in me thinking, oh, hey, if I were like a executive as a young kid, that would be the thing I would try to do. Is like, okay, may as well try to do the crossover. I mean, hell, Hasbro owns Power Rangers now. I'm surprised they could easily just try to establish some sort of crossover film.
Yeah, Power Rangers meets G.I. Joe. Power Rangers
meets Transformers. I mean, a Megazord battle, like Megazord versus Megatron. Who wouldn't want to watch that?
I mean, for crying out loud, the comics did Power Rangers meeting the DC universe of all things. So, I mean, that's definitely something I'd probably pay to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also would be like, how?
Honestly,
like it would be like if I saw it, like if I legit saw a trailer that showed me the Power Rangers fighting Transformers, in my brain, I would be like, how did this happen? And why is this happening? And
this is why Marvel versus DC is never getting a movie.
What is the setup? What is the setup of this?
To that, I would say they did a crossover in Power Rangers in Space with the Ninja Turtles. So
that's true.
Out of the realm of possibility.
They did do that. Alex,
that was my reaction when watching that episode as a kid. Was like, why are they fighting the Ninja Turtles?
Right. Alex, Shay, you guys have been kind of quiet on this one. So, 2 new Transformers movies. I don't know your viewpoint on the Michael Bay ones that came out or Bumblebee, but given the announcement that they're working on 2 more movies, excited? Not? I mean, are you just not a Transformers fan? It's okay. You won't hurt my feelings.
No, I'm a Transformers fan.
All right.
Transformers fan. I actually did see the Michael Bay one. I actually enjoyed the first one. I thought the first one was very. When you got to the third one, they kind of lost. And when it came to Bumblebee, I actually was very interested in watching Bumblebee, but I so far haven't gotten around to actually seeing it yet. But I was interested in watching it. So to hear there's 2 more films, or that they're thinking of doing 2 more films, my brain is kind of okay. And then my brain's also going, you're making more? Like, that's literally what my brain is thinking. So, like, until I see a trailer for a new one, I'm kind of, okay, let's see what you can do.
So I will at least say to you, like, as a guy who loved the first, or liked the first, hated the second, loved the third, hated the fourth and fifth, Bumblebee is a delight. It actually is. It brings me back to a lot of the stuff that I loved from that first movie that didn't get repeated later on, and it worked in that weird way. But I hate to burst the chat's bubble here. I was actually able to dig out another article that confirms Michael Bay is overseeing both treatments. So he's not writing it. Let me see if I can dig it out really quick.
Yeah. Like, from what I could see, it's a case where he's still on as a producer, since his company, Platinum Dunes, is still producing it. But again, when he's a producer, that's not necessarily a death sentence. Case in point, Ninja Turtles, which actually surprised all of us.
Yeah, which he was a producer on, not a director. So at that point, like, it's a whole other role. So at that point, I mean, Bay's involved, but he's not writing these script treatments. He might get involved when they get approved, but at that point, up until now, like, I'm kind of excited for what the script treatments will, at least at the beginning, look at look like.
And also, will they include Mark Wahlberg in this again?
Will they include Marky Mark in this Funky Bunch?
Well,
or Shia LaBeouf.
Or will they get Shia LaBeouf to come back?
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf has pretty much put Hollywood behind him, given a lot of his recent actions.
He's put life behind him.
He's put a lot behind him.
He's gone more into experimental art pieces. He's made it clear that he ain't coming back.
Yeah,
but he was good. He was good in Transformers. I actually enjoyed him in the first one. I enjoyed him.
And yes, chat, Megan Fox will probably be brought in because she has atoned for her sins of calling her boss Satan. Hence why she was in the Ninja Turtles movies.
Yeah, but again,
I wanted
key
to hear
difference.
back in time.
Michael Bay was the producer, not the director, and that
Yeah.
could have been a major deciding factor.
Probably. All right, so we actually are kind of a little over time, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next story, but I think we pretty much kind of covered the points. Is 2 new movies. We'll be very interested to see what happens, but not a whole lot known. At the very least, Beast Wars is worrisome. All right, so the next one is also very worrisome, as Netflix has announced another anime live-action adaptation.
That gives me chills.
And you know what?
And not good chills.
You know what? I'm now officially okay with the Bebop movie. You could do the Bebop movie, just don't do this one. Netflix has officially announced that they are going to do a live-action series of One Piece.
Oh, Lord.
I see Death Note all over again.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it may be too early to tell, but it's just why?
Well, I can already tell you it's
Why?
not live action because you are going to have an extreme amount of CG in this movie. Or in
Yeah,
the
they'll
series.
still probably have real actors, so...
Yeah, that is the difference. They're not gonna have CGI versions of the Straw Hats running around, except for maybe Chopper. Chopper, you have to do CG.
Is he the deer? Is he the deer?
Yeah, Chopper's
Okay.
the deer,
Yeah, that's a
and,
CG character right there.
Yeah, Chopper, Frankie, and Brooke would be the ones you would have to use CG because they're Frankie, maybe if it's augmented CG where you still have a live person, but Brooke is literally a frickin' skeleton. You have to do CG for Brooke.
Yes. So at that point, and I also will say this, I feel bad for the actor that gets cast as Zolo because his dental bills are going to go through the roof trying to hold that sword in his teeth.
You realize they can, make it look like an actual sword without it being a heavy
I
sword,
get
right?
that concept, but you're at least going to have something weighted to show that he has it in his mouth.
I mean, easiest way to do it, have only the hilt and then CGI the blade. That
Probably.
would be the easiest way they would do it. I mean, I can see them maybe
Doesn't he
putting
get
some...
cursed blades eventually? So they already have whacked out blades anyway.
More or less. It depends on which arc, and it's been a long time since I've followed One Piece, but I mean, there are aspects of it that are doable, but then there are other aspects that I look at this and I'm just like, I mean, I can see the appeal, and given the popularity of One Piece, but what's to stop this from being another Dragon Ball Evolution?
See, my
Nothing.
problem with this is simply that you're going to have 300 episodes of backlog. What are you going to do? Just put everything into overdrive to have all of the crew all there?
It looks like they're
Sure.
just
Adam,
doing.
One Piece is currently at over 900 episodes.
Okay, 900. You have 900
that.
episodes. And from
Well,
what I understand, it takes
that.
you have a straight straight gap between getting certain crew members. So what? You're just going to have the crew members that are there, or are you just going to exclude them?
Well, honestly, if they decide to go with the series and break it down by season, as Netflix usually does, I can see them kind of taking it on an arc-by-arc basis, where maybe they start with the Romance Dawn arc for the first season. That's where you have Luffy assemble basically the first 5.
Yeah,
more or less, where
he
you have,
assembles Usopp, he gets Zolo
Usopp,
and
Nami, Zolo,
Nami.
and Sanji, and Chopper. I can see that being the first season of kind of a condensed version, or if I were, depending on how many episodes, if I were to pace it out, I'd be like, okay, for this first season, just to test the waters, pardon the pun, and just to see if this is actually doable, we'll limit it to, okay, we'll go until the Barati arc, because there you don't have any major CGI characters to worry about, except for maybe Buggy. But at least Buggy's the outlier. You don't have to worry about a CGI Chopper, and at least when you get to the Barati arc, there it's a case of, okay, well, mostly human characters, mostly human adversaries, some CG work needed, but not enough to break the bank. And then if that season does well, then moving on to bring in people like Chopper, and then going on to bring in people like Frankie, and then Brooke, and then the whole Baroque Works saga, which that would have to be a season by itself. All of the Baroque Works Alabasta arc stuff.
See,
It looks
all the
like-
stuff you brought up just makes me worry.
It looks like they're only doing a 10 episode series so far.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
like
10
what are they gonna
episodes.
put within that 10 episodes? Because like I personally though have not seen One Piece, but I'm sure in those 10 episodes you don't get the
This is a
5.
shonen manga. There's no way they're gonna get that much story in 10
No.
episodes.
So yeah, 10
But also,
episodes. Most I
yeah,
can see.
but also
Yeah,
Well,
10 episodes, most I can see them is getting up to where they add Usopp to the crew. That's the.
yeah.
If you were to speed it along, because the first chapters with Luffy and Shanks, that could be an episode just by itself.
Well,
And
I
then
mean, at
maybe
that
you
point,
condense-
like, if you completely condense all of the stuff that happened up until that point, maybe you can get Nami, Zolo, Usopp, and Luffy all in one episode. All like, let's just say you assemble the Straw Hat crew at its basis, and then at that point, maybe I could see them adding something like, I don't know, Sanji into it. But then
But also,
going to
like-
move on to Chopper, that was a huge arc, and so at that point, I don't see you condensing that.
But also, like, it depends on also how long each episode is. Because
Yeah.
if we, One Piece is like a 25, 24-minute episode. So if they decide to do 10 episodes, let's say they decide to make each episode an hour long, that's technically like 3 episodes of One Piece in 1 hour. So if they decide to do that, then they could condense it into 10, but also you have to put into perspective of what are they going to take out? Like, what are certain aspects that they may feel like, okay, we don't need to have this in because of the fact that we're going to lose people who've never watched One Piece. And
Yeah, like-
they're just purely just wanting to watch it. And it's kind of like, if I can put it in perspective, when Netflix put the Bleach movie on there, the Bleach movie was about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but it put in there a good kind of substantial part or chunk of that series within that hour and a half in a great way though. So it's interesting to see how they're going to do it, but this is different compared to them doing, Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop's only 24, 26 episodes.
Well, not
One-
only that, but like Bebop, you don't have to worry about too much extemporaneous CG. I mean, the
No,
ship
you don't.
battles would be that way, but a majority of it you could have just like out in the city while they're looking for a bounty. So that takes out a lot of that kind of CG work. But with One Piece, I don't see them being able to take a lot of it out.
I
No.
mean, some arcs I can see them reworking if they kind of do what the Dragon Ball animated movies did with Curse of the Blood Rubies, where they kind of condense and take out a few things. So, for example, with Zolo, he's recruited when Luffy deals with Axe Hand Morgan. I can see them cutting out that arc and thinking, oh, he finds Zolo marooned on an island somewhere
Yeah.
because of what he did, and then brings him on his crew. And then I can see them maybe having the main antagonist of this first season being Buggy, and thereby just narrowing it to Luffy, Zolo, and Nami, having that be kind of the central cast for the first season, because Buggy is enough of a presence that I can see them framing like, okay, the main big bad for this one would be Buggy the Clown. Like, nice, simple antagonist that we can establish, give enough character beats for. If we skip Axe Hand Morgan, I can see it working like that, where they basically bypass stuff to get to the more bombastic villains. Like, Buggy, you need. Captain Kuro, you need. Don Krieg, you definitely need, especially if you're trying to establish who Sanji is and how they get him to join the crew. But
Yeah.
characters like Axe Hand Morgan, not so much.
I feel like they just shouldn't do it. Like,
Mm,
no one's asking for a One Piece live action.
Look, Romney's making a very compelling argument to be able to make this work. And here's the thing. One thing I know about Romney is he would make it work. He would actually try to make a proper treatment, look through it and say this isn't necessary, and we can make that worthwhile. But just in my personal opinion, Cowboy Bebop works because of the fact it's 26 episodes and every episode is basically hunt random bounty of the day. And so at that point, it works better than this simply because that's what it is. One Piece, Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, stuff like that is just going to be so much harder to do live action than
Well-
Bebop, in my opinion, just because
like
of all of the
Naruto.
things that you have to keep track of.
Or like Naruto, they want to do a Naruto live action. Oh,
Yeah, and even
Yeah.
that has issues.
Yeah, I mean, some shonen series would at least translate better than others. Because, I mean, when we covered the rumors of a live-action My Hero Academia, I was one of the few that actually argued that it was doable because of the structure of My Hero Academia and kind of the overall structure and the overall appeal of it. And even One Piece, compared to stuff like Dragon Ball and even Death Note, like One Piece has that kind of episodic nature where it's basically, especially considering the way the earlier chapters were structured, it was basically Luffy setting out on his own, trying to basically find One Piece in order to become King of the Pirates. That's literally his catchphrase. And so if it really depends on how loyal they want to be to the source material, because when adaptations deviate, it can sometimes work. I mean, that's why I'm a fan of the live action Japanese Death Note movies, because they figured, okay, well, we can't fit all of this into a series of 2 live action films. Let's focus on the important element, which they focused was, okay, the dynamic between Light and L. That was their focus, and they figured, okay, this will be our focus, and it can work. I just really hope they give it to the right people, and that's the thing I'm concerned with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's kind of the issue that I have.
Some shows can work. Like, I know a lot of people that were huge fans of the Rurouni Kenshin live action, and I've heard such good things about that. So
the movies are good. Like, the movies are good. It's just a shame that the creator is, kind of a scumbag.
Yeah. So, like, if they were to do a Rurouni Kenshin, like, live action series, that would work. That would easily work.
Absolutely.
But to me, you have something One Piece, and especially with like, Luffy's powers of being able to stretch, like, that will go so terribly wrong or be so terribly
guarantee you that they will try to recreate the joke from Fantastic Four about the bathroom.
Yes.
With Luffy. They will do it.
Yes.
Because they can.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm getting Attack on Titan vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just to a point. The difference, again, I know this because I'm a lot closer to it. Luffy's powers don't work the same way as Mr. Fantastic, where although they kind of play fast and loose later on as Luffy kind of gets a better understanding, in that early chunk, it's not that he can just stretch at will. He actually has to throw force behind it. He has to actually use momentum.
I get that. But at the same time, a writer from Hollywood, unless he's a diehard fan, is going to look at that and go, stretchy powers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless they're like already a fan, like to me,
if they're already a hardcore fan, they get it.
If they're a fan, yeah. So if they would have to literally find someone who's a writer who already knows the source material about One Piece, who would want to do a live action the way they would want to watch as a fan, not just as someone who's trying to make money. But they're not gonna find someone who's gonna be like that. It's really rare. I feel like when you ever find someone who's already of the source material when it's like an anime, so
that's the problem.
They're not gonna find someone who likes One Piece or who's already a fan of One Piece, and that's why we got Dragon Ball Evolution, because they had no idea what Dragon Ball was.
The perfect example here of like the perfect storm that happened was Alita, is that you had James Cameron, who already was a really great filmmaker, who liked I believe it was the Alita anime he had seen first, and then somebody got him into the manga.
Yeah, Del Toro was the one who got him into the manga.
Oh, it was the manga first. Okay.
Yeah, and the other factor with Dragon Ball Evolution is that another thing to consider is the budget, because they had tried earlier drafts of the Dragon Ball script were more faithful to the manga, but it also caused the budget to get into the billions. And this was in like early 2000s money where it was just not feasible.
Yeah.
That's also going to be the deciding factor here is, okay, can we get someone who can write the source material and be faithful to it without us, forcing us to spend like $3 billion just to make this show?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so at that point, like, what I was trying to get there is Cameron was a fan. And then he handed it over to Robert Rodriguez, who, to my knowledge, was also a fan. And so at that point, like, they were able to do that and stick to the interpretation that they wanted. The problem is that if Netflix has anything to say about it, they're going to hand it to somebody who probably isn't.
Yeah.
And
that
that's
also raises the other factor, because Shueisha was effectively burned by Dragon Ball Evolution. There's probably going to be a lot of things Shueisha is going to demand from Netflix to even sign off on it, because I've read a lot of stuff about how, because of Dragon Ball Evolution, Shueisha has been a lot more reluctant to work with Western studios. So most I can see is that this probably is going to end up in development hell between them trying to skim the budget, them
Probably.
trying to get a writer they want, but then Shueisha being like, we need to be there with them because we do not want a repeat of this. And I can basically see it all breaking down. It's really going to come down to how flexible Shueisha is going to be.
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
again, with how copyright works in Japan, Shueisha, and most notably Eiichiro Oda, has final say.
Yeah, pretty much. And so at that point, that I kind of agree with Romney. I think eventually this is going to end up in development hell because they're just not going to be able to make it work.
Yeah.
They just want to announce it now to see if they can get the One Piece fan base to surge them.
They also should put One Piece, the actual anime, on Netflix. Because
Yes.
if they do that, they'll really be rolling in the dough. That's how they got the Bleach anime trending on there.
Problem
because
is
they had the live
Funimation.
action, and then people went there.
Yeah,
True.
Funimation has it. So at that
But
point,
Funimation, but Netflix put Fairy Tail there.
Well,
Fairy Tail's
kind of-
on Netflix.
Isn't Fairy Tail by Viz?
I thought
Fairy-
Fairy Tail was by
no, Fairy Tail is
by-
Funimation because I
it's
have Fairy
Funimation.
Tail.
yeah,
Okay.
basically what it is that with each anime series, there are specific license deals that were cut during the time. So with One Piece, Funimation got the exclusive streaming rights for like One Piece and a number of shows, but stuff like My Hero Academia, that's where they've got a little bit more complicated, given that both
Yeah.
Funimation and Crunchyroll are part of the actual planning committees in Japan. And so certain shows Funimation was willing to relinquish to Netflix, others not so much. Fairy Tail, although it's popular, doesn't have as strong a pull as, well, One Piece. Oftentimes, many people often say Fairy Tail ripped off One Piece, but that's a case where Fairy Tail doesn't have as much of a foothold here in the West as One Piece.
No.
And it's also, Fairy Tail is published by Kodansha and not Shueisha. And so you've got a different publisher at work. And so there are some Funimation shows that, there's also even shows that have been dubbed by Funimation that have been changed to other licensing companies. Case in point, Full Metal Alchemist, dubbed by Funimation, but now controlled by Aniplex USA.
But
Yeah.
now
Well,
it's back
I-
in Funimation
yeah.
because Funnyplex.
Yeah, point
Funny
being,
ones.
anime licensing is real complicated.
Oh no,
Yeah.
you made a
Yeah.
perfect point for that.
I feel like if Netflix makes this One Piece like 10-episode live action series, I can see Funimation letting them put One Piece on
Yeah,
because it's gonna get people wanting to watch like what is this actually based off,
yeah.
so I
likely,
can watch the legit series.
Yeah, and likely Shueisha and Toei would probably, if Funimation wasn't willing, Shueisha and Toei would probably pressure them to do it. Or likely they would put it on Netflix, but only in Japan, because that's how it is with Dragon Ball Z currently, is that you can watch
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z on Netflix in Japan.
Yeah. Just to kind of wrap things up for this particular story, I think this is a perfect example of it. when Castlevania was announced for Netflix, it was a risk. Because if you think about it, that was a series, a movie, they'd all been in development hell for years up until that point. And so it was a real risk to do Castlevania. And even season 1, look, 4 episodes, it didn't necessarily pan out. It was season 2 that bought a lot of the hardcore fan base, and that's why season 3 is happening and why it has the momentum that it does. And for One Piece, in my opinion, they're going to have the exact same skepticism that is walking into this series. You're going to have to justify that this works. And if it shows in a trailer, because they're going to release trailers, if it shows in the trailer that you are not giving your 100% effort or you're not doing a proper treatment, you're not going to have the fan base behind you the way I see it. And those 10 episodes will be the last.
Yeah, and again, lest we forget, people still remember Death Note and
Yeah.
the utter train wreck it was, even though apparently it's getting a sequel.
It is getting a
What?
sequel. Yeah.
Yep,
I mean, it'll make a good horror film.
you'd think,
I
but
mean, Death Note's a good thriller if you've never watched Death Note.
Yeah.
Like if you've never seen the original, then you probably did enjoy it. Like
Yeah, I mean,
if you
I
take
feel-
all context out of it and you're like, I'm just watching a thriller movie, it was great. You're
I mean-
like, I've seen Death Note, this isn't good.
I mean, I do have to feel bad for Masaoka, who tried. He really tried to make sure that the creators were in the loop, in the know on what they were doing. He was the one who basically fought like hell to get it off the ground. I'm just like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, Oka, but I mean, some, it's just, It makes me sad.
All right, so moving on into the next story, I'm actually going to skip one of the stories and we'll go right back to it in the agenda, but I think we can quickly glance over this one as well. So we also have interesting reports on comings and goings of Capcom recently. If people are not aware, which at that point I would ask, what cave are you living in? The Resident Evil 3 remake is actually pretty much a month away at this point, and people are very excited for it, but a lot of people have been asking since 2017 what is going to happen with the next entry in the series with Resident Evil 8. Is there going to be one? Will it be based like how 7 was in kind of bringing back survival horror, or will it go back into the ways of 6 and try and go back into an action game prerogative? A lot of people have had a lot of guesses, but according to an interview that was done, I'm not sure about the original source, but Eurogamer confirmed it. They are talking about Resident Evil 8. It might actually be in development at Capcom, and we at least know that they are going to be keeping one aspect that really made 7 work, the first-person perspective. They are going to keep it first-person, which I know is going to irritate a lot of Resident Evil fans. I actually do know people who are really hoping that with the 2 and 3 remake that we were going to get kind of a revised version of tank controls that would actually work. And so at that point we could return to that kind of a view with Resident Evil 8. But according to the directors, or at least the perception of these, it's going to go back to the first-person view. I gotta say, personally, I actually think it should, considering what 7 was trying to do. And since they have that momentum, they might as well work with it. But at this point, Shay, I'm not sure if you're a Resident Evil fan or not, so I'm going to go to you first. What's your take on the developments of Resident Evil 8?
I've mostly heard of Resident Evil. I think I've played maybe like one Resident Evil game. Scared the hell out of me as a kid, so like I haven't played anymore. But I mean, I guess we'll see when it comes out.
Just curious, do you know which one you played?
I want to say, oh God, was Resident Evil out on? Maybe it was PlayStation. I played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was PlayStation.
Okay, so at that point, you either had the original. My guess is you probably were playing either 2 or 3.
Probably, because
probably 2 or 3.
My
because
brother liked Resident Evil, and I don't even think I played. I think I was watching him play it, and it scared me. And I was like, all right, have fun.
Yeah, because I have a feeling that the horrible dub of 1 would not have scared you.
No.
There are jump scare moments in that game, but then you'd hear people talk, and that would probably make you laugh, so you'd be okay. But if I were to take a guess, it probably is 3, because Nemesis came out of nowhere and like killed your brother, and then at that point it's like, nope, I'm out.
Well, then again, could also be 2, because if he was playing a B scenario, Mr. X.
Mr. X,
Oh, God.
Lickers, yeah, there's tons of things that could do that. But I kind of get your perspective. Like, you're not entirely motivated, but you're kind of still saying if it works, go ahead and do it. I mean, for crying out loud, if Nemesis was scary to you, I could only imagine how you would react to the Bakers. So
I still have nightmares about the Bakers.
we all have nightmares about the Bakers. It's just post-traumatic stress you have to deal with. Alex,
I don't like it.
Alex, what's your take on returning back to the first-person perspective?
That bums me out. I'm not a fan of games.
I think in a lot of cases, once you actually see 7 and how it works, you probably might be 50-50 on it, but that's at least my opinion. I don't know, like, I can't claim to be an authority on Alex, but I would say that if you saw it, then you would probably see, like, the aesthetic worked. And unfortunately, I don't think we have Alex right now. Romney, your take on the first-person perspective. We'll bounce back to Alex.
Well, as the Resident Evil fan in the group, I am actually all for it, especially considering the rumors here that they're continuing with Ethan Winters as the protagonist alongside Chris Redfield. Given the way 7 worked with what it was trying to accomplish, I can see why they would stick with it because, well, the first-person perspective clearly worked, and this is coming from someone who's played both the main game, Not a Hero, and End of Zoe, which End of Zoe was kind of like a good way to cap off the entire thing, because you literally get into a boxing match with Swamp Thing. I don't know how else to describe it without going into like major details, but that
wasn't
awesome.
Swamp Thing, that was Cthulhu.
Well,
it had
either
tentacles. They counted.
Well, either ways, a boxing match with a swamp creature, it was like both simultaneously horrifying but also awesome. It was basically the most Resident Evil thing the game
we
did.
actually have to show this part to Alex, because like the End of Zoe DLC is, I'm a random cousin of the Bakers. If something gets into my way, I punch it to death.
Pretty much. And it's just... But yeah, like them sticking with that first-person perspective, it makes sense because it worked with Resident Evil 7. It worked with the aesthetic they were going for, especially considering that although many people think, oh, but with the remakes of 2 and 3, they'd be going back to this. Here's the way I see it. 2, 3, and probably Code Veronica, since if 3 does well, that would be the next one they would remake. They're probably going to treat those the way they treat Revelations, where it's a case of, okay, well, these are established characters. We're just going to fill in these gaps in the storyline, fix the things that the originals did wrong, and give a more canon version of events, whereas with 7 and 8, they're kind of starting a new trend, because 4 through 6 was focused on Las Plagas, with 6 kind of capping it all off, whereas 7, especially if you look at the events of Not a Hero, they kind of established, okay, well, this is just a new arc of bioterror. And although I don't like the idea of them bringing back Ethan as the main character, I kind of get that he probably would be in custody with the BSAA after the events of 7. So I hope that they don't bring Ethan back, because as a character, he was just meant to be the everyman. He's not a super soldier. He's not a special forces operative. So if Chris is the main character there, at least it makes sense.
I could see Chris coming back, but Ethan, Here, I think this is actually an assumption being made by the writer of the article, is that Ethan's coming back. I don't think that it's set in stone that Ethan will come back.
Yeah,
it would make more sense to have Chris.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're playing around with it, either maybe bringing back Chris. One thing I would like to see would be them bringing back Jill and kind of showing how she's adjusted post Resident Evil 5.
At the bare minimum, like maybe this would work with having Ethan in it, is because of the fact that he is somehow immune to all of the stuff that happened in 7, that they could be like doing experiments on his blood to try and see if they could figure out his immunity so that they can give it to others.
Well, yeah, especially considering, well, actually, then again, the immunity thing, that's already kind of established given what we learn at the end of Zoe, where they already kind of figured that out. So I don't really see that working per se, but I can see, given the canon sources that we learn about what happens to Jill, granted it's in passing, but it's a case of where she's kept at the BSAA under observation. I can see them doing the same with Zoe and Ethan. I mean, the way I see it, if they were to bring Ethan back, it would have to be maybe an outbreak at a BSAA headquarters that Ethan happens to be in, and he has to survive and make his way out. But given that they're going to be mentioning things like werewolf-like enemies and proper zombies and stuff like that, I mean, maybe they have Ethan as a placeholder just to make sure the mechanics still work.
Because when they say like werewolves and female ghosts, I'm like sitting there going, okay, so this is going to be based in Europe. So at that point, you're probably looking at like going to another Umbrella facility is probably where it's going to be based.
Yeah, or like not necessarily Umbrella. I mean, again, I don't want to get into spoilers per se for if there are people who haven't experienced it with it. But Not a Hero hints at basically another malevolent force that tries to pick up
another Umbrella-like organization.
Yeah, especially considering that at the start of Not a Hero, they established that Umbrella is back, but this time they're the ones trying to clean up their messes.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of potential for the story to go. Them keeping the first-person perspective makes sense, because that's what worked with 7 for this type of story and experience they were going for. Honestly, some of the moments in 7 wouldn't work if it was a third-person perspective. I mean, yeah, fans are pissed off with that, but just some core aspects of the gameplay just wouldn't hit the same way.
That's probably true. Just to kind of wrap this up, my thoughts on it are, I think you should go with what works. If that's how the director wants to do it, then do first-person perspective and see if that holds. Really what I'm not... technically worried about a first-person perspective. I just want a good story, which is what 7 was. If you can return Resident Evil back to its puzzle solving, its really good story, its really good horror elements, then I'm already on board. I have no problem with you experimenting and zombie werewolves. Yeah, sure, why not? You know,
I
like,
mean, that's kind of what hunters are more or less. I
pretty
mean,
much.
It's like, oh, zombie werewolves. So in my mind, that was all I'm like zombie werewolves. Like, so basically hunters.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's kind of my viewpoint. We'll have to see what happens later. And frankly, I don't think that the remake... I kind of agree with that with Romney. I don't think the remakes stop at 3. I could see Code Veronica happening. I could actually even see a lot of the PS2 iterations of... like the online game and stuff like that, actually getting treatments and being able to have that canon reworked. So at that point, I see a lot of potential there. But we are boring to tears, Shay and Alex, because they really just don't have anything to add here. I'm not being mean with it, but that's just the bottom line. Like, me and Romney could talk Resident Evil for days. We really could. And it would work. So without further ado, let's get into the last story that we have tonight, which actually is a little old, but I'm going to give you guys a reason why we are going to be covering this, because if people remember, last week, a question was brought up, and I kind of let my opinions known on being able to have an actual animation award show to be able to showcase some of the stuff that's being done. Now, obviously, I got a little bit cornered by Romney and Alex on that one. It didn't end there. As I was hanging out with a buddy on Discord, and I really wish I had this recorded because that's the only way that I could justify it and show that it actually happened. But basically, the conversation went like this. Like, dude, I would really like to be able to have coverage of an animation award thing. Well, didn't you have that whole Annie's thing that you didn't do coverage for? Yeah. Well, why don't you do that? Why don't I do that? Why don't you do that? Why don't I do that? Yeah, you should totally do that. Yeah, I probably should. Thank you for giving me the idea. You are welcome. Now go ahead and go write that agenda, asshole. Thank you, piss nugget. I'll get that done. I have weird relationships with a lot of my friends, but I'm not kidding. It actually got to a screaming match, and we had a third person in there, and she's like, what did I miss?
Like, I'm so confused.
Now tell us about your combustible lemons.
I would, but it already blew up.
Well, this is why you don't microwave them for 40 minutes.
So, because we want to be able to give that homage, we're going to cover the results of the Annies. And next year, we'll probably be a little bit more up to speed on that. But let's go ahead and at least cover some of the winners for the Annies, because I actually think some of these decisions might actually, as Romney stated, influence how the Oscars go when it comes to Best Animated Feature. Because if you look at a lot of the winnings, Klaus was very on top of things. It took away a few awards.
Yeah.
So at that point, it does technically have the potential to be able to win Best Animated Feature. And I think, in all honesty, it probably should.
Last 5 Annie Awards for Best Feature have gone on to win the Best Oscar Animated Feature. So, yeah, I'm coming around to seeing Romney's point here. I think Klaus probably will be the winner.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible at this point, considering that they did as well as they did. A lot of the stuff, a few of our listeners probably won't know the titles like right off the bat, but just to kind of give, so their best feature went to Klaus, as well as, let's see, where are the other Klaus winners? It also went to Klaus for best character animation and an animated feature. You also got best character design in an animated feature for Klaus. You also got best direction in an animated feature. You also got best production design in an animated feature. Do you get what I'm saying here, guys? It looks like this is probably the perfect storm. It's probably going to do well at the Oscars. In particular, I was actually kind of surprised that they had... So maybe it's just because I don't follow it as often as you guys do, but I was surprised to see that they did Best Character Animation in Live Action Film and Best Character Animation in a Video Game, which aptly went out to Kingdom Hearts 3! Kingdom Hearts 3 won something!
Looking here, it doesn't look like.
Oh,
it went
actually,
to
no, my bad.
Series.
Damn it. Unruly Heroes won. Damn it. But Avengers Endgame won Best Character Animation in a Live-Action Feature. So at that point,
Nice.
that kind of makes sense. But we actually have a couple of interesting additions that won. First of all, his Dark Materials. I didn't actually realize that BBC Studios had done. I'm guessing it's a animated TV show that's based on the book series His Dark Materials. That already is going to get my wife excited.
Which, to give people context, his Dark Materials, an example of a book in that series is The Golden Compass.
Yes.
That's kind of, the Golden Compass is the first book in that series. I didn't realize it until I was at a Target and saw a bundle of the books of, oh, now a BBC animated series. And I was like, wait, that was a series? Because I only saw the movie with Daniel Craig, and I just thought, oh, well, they clearly split the book in half.
Neither did I. And so at that point,
Yeah.
I was a little bit shocked, and I haven't told my wife yet. I'll probably tell her, or maybe you already know because you're watching. Sorry, hon.
I read the Golden Compass.
All right, there you go. Like,
That's
actually, one of the
only one I
Christmas
read.
presents she got this year was the whole His Dark Materials book set.
Yeah, I didn't know
So-
it was a series as a kid. I just read the Golden Compass. It was like, what did I just read?
Yeah. Then also we have a couple of voice acting ones that I think should get some merit. Best voice acting in a TV show went to Bob's Burgers, and I can't talk now. Jeez. Best voice acting in an animated feature went to Frozen 2.
Specifically, Josh Gad,
Josh Gad, who's
the voice of Olaf.
Oh, really? Olaf is like the last thing I liked about the first one. Oh, and actually, we forgot Best Editorial in a feature went to Klaus as well. So, I mean, just lots of love in the Annies. I just want to name some of the other things that were up for winners for it because, you know, mentioning all of the nominations would take a little too much time. Love, Death, and Robots won Best Music. I Lost My Body won Best Music in an Animated Feature, and I believe it also won a few other awards itself. We also had Carmen Sandiego won the Best Storyboarding for a TV show, which I didn't even know that there was a new Carmen Sandiego series, and yeah, there is, actually. Kind of interesting. We also had Tuca and Bertie won for Best Writing in a TV show. I Lost My Body also won Best Writing in an Animated Feature. And yeah, Love, Death, and Robots actually got 2 awards as well. So amazing, and I'm glad that they give the credit to voice actors as well as to animation and gaming and animation and live action features. So this is going to be a thing now from here on in, as we actually are going to be covering the Annies because a guy yelled at me.
Nice.
Like, a guy yelled at you after we both basically yelled at you.
That's how things happen on the podcast, is that people yell at me and then things happen.
So there's a few more we should probably mention too.
Yeah, I'm just kind of bouncing through them. The one that actually also catches my eye right now is Ask the Storybots. Jib Jab Brothers Studios. Are we talking about the Jib Jab website?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Dude, I just thought they disbanded. I'm so happy. So we also have that. We have Disney Mickey Mouse from Disney TV Animation, which won Best TV and Media for Children. If only I could get my kids to watch Mickey Mouse, but Mickey creeps them out.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's the head shape because he doesn't look the way he does in Kingdom Hearts. So they don't have a problem with Mickey in Kingdom Hearts when my wife is playing it. But when you show them like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, they're just like, and they don't like it, and I have to go back to Little
This
Einsteins.
is what happens when you have an animation studio from Japan working on Mickey, and then an animation studio from India working on Mickey.
This is true. Best Special Production went to How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming. Best Short Subject went to Uncle Thomas Accounting for the Days. There's tons of stuff that I'm already interested in looking into. Klaus at bare minimum. I want to see this new Mickey Mouse series to see what they've done with it. BoJack Horseman. I thought that was canceled on Netflix, and it won Best TV and Media for a general audience.
Bob's Burgers won too.
Yeah, Bob's Burgers won. I mean,
For
this is amazing.
Best voice acting in TV and media.
I also want to point out, like, those who went up against Klaus for best feature, it's pretty much, I think, the same ones on the Oscars. You have, well, Frozen 2's not in it, but How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, Missing Link, I think, was also in there, as well as Toy Story 4. So this is pretty much kind of a pre-Oscars moment. Minus, I think there's one missing, but there is one missing. I can't remember
Frozen
from who,
2
though.
also didn't even get nominated for an Oscar.
Nope. It got nominated for an Oscar, but it was not animated
for
feature.
Best
For
song.
best animation. Yeah, it didn't get
best
nominated
song.
for animated, like best animated movie.
Yeah, it didn't get that, but I think in all honesty, Disney's just kind of putting their money backing on Toy Story 4 doing it.
Which wasn't that great.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen anything past 2.
And
I like 3 was good. 4 meh.
Yeah, like I haven't seen 4, but my reaction when I heard the announcement that they were making 4, I'm just like, but why? 3 ended on such a good note. Why?
I know.
But then I remember and realize, oh yeah, this is Disney. They'll never let anything die on
It's
or off screen.
No.
Money.
We say
any
that,
other?
and then they took forever to give us an too.
And, they took forever to get us what? Incredibles 2?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Took forever.
but that's more just due to Brad Bird having other Disney properties he was directing
Yeah.
and trying to move to live action. And same case with anything Andrew Stanton worked on, because they were both trying to do live action films. I think Brad Bird went on to do like Mission Impossible, I think was the one he went to direct. That was a live action film.
Yeah,
And
it
he
was
did-
one of them. I can't remember which.
He also did Tomorrowland, Brad Bird.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I think that was him. Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah,
why
that
I
was
like
him.
it. I like
Well,
I like
mean,
Brad Bird.
as Steven Spielberg put it in one of his lectures at UCLA, all directors should be animators first.
Or at least go into horror, because then at that point they know how to manage a budget. Are there any other acknowledgments that you want to make sure get given, Alex?
Yes. Hold on. Let me get a pull up her news feed real quick here. Oh yeah. So there's a few specialty awards, like honorable mentions or whatever, that the Annies also gives out. One is the Winsor McKay Award. This year they gave it to Henry Selick, so director of Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, Coraline, Ron Clements, John Musker, Disney, like The Little Mermaid and such, and the late Satoshi Kon. He was also honored with that award, so excellent on him, especially with so much of his work coming back into print.
And then out of nowhere, a kid rollerblading with a baseball bat hit the dude upside the head.
Yeah.
What, that didn't happen?
No.
Well, either hit someone upside the head, or suddenly there was just a baby that had like really, really good luck that people were chasing throughout the auditorium.
Oh, okay. All right, that works too.
So that there was one more, the Oob Airwix Award. I'm not actually sure. I don't know the guy's name, unfortunately, but I think he's kind of one of the early pioneers of CGI animation. So even like before Pixar really took off. So good on him. And of course, like any award show, there's a giant in memoriam section. This year was a hefty list because it had 60 names on it, which included all of the 36 Kyoto animation victims, as well as Robert Axelrod, who just passed very recently.
Rest
Richard
in peace,
Lloyd.
Robert Axelrod.
Yeah.
Lord Zed will live on forever for all of us.
Yeah, Richard Williams was also honored. He, of course, the animation director for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Rusty Taylor. She was also mentioned in the memorial reel. So those are the highlights.
Is
of
that
Emmys.
the original voice for Minnie?
Yes, and she was Martin Prince and a few other characters in The Simpsons.
Yep. So there you go. Yeah, well, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so final thoughts on the Annies, and yes, they will become a regular feature because people yelled at me, and that's how things happen on this podcast.
And at least it's nice to actually have an award show judged by people who actually care about animation as a medium.
Yeah.
That is why I stopped caring about the Oscars.
Yeah. That and they're a ginormous circle jerk, as you've said, not me.
As
All
we've said
right.
repeatedly.
And we basically say that all the time. Like I just can't stand it anymore. Anyway, so we actually need to wrap things up for the evening, but before we do that, It's time, once again, for another Geek News movie night. As our reigning champion, Alex, who picked the last movie, Beetlejuice, has now set a theme. And I'm gonna go ahead and let the reigning champion here, tell us the theme, and then we will get into picks.
Right. So the theme I picked was your favorite true story film, because we are going into award season, and true story movies are usually awards contenders. So again, I want to stress that the movie is obviously needing to be true in some fashion. I'm not expecting like the strictest adherence to accuracy or anything, but like actually bases in fact, not like Fargo, which pretends it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that and but otherwise the criteria is pretty light. It doesn't have to have won awards, just like I said, award baity kind of film. Also, like I said, it could be biographical, or it could be based on a war, like Dunkirk, which would be event based, something like that. So yeah, any true story film, your favorite picks. That was the theme I went with after winning for Beetlejuice.
All right, and so for those who do not do not know how the formula works for Geek News Movie Night, the way that we do this is that now that Alex has introduced the theme, true story movies, we now all give a suggestion, which Alex will be last because he is the reigning champion. Ergo, he doesn't have much to prove. So I make it sound like that's this big competition. It really isn't, guys. And so at that point, we're actually going to start things up because we're going to have a guest on that podcast as well, and that is Shay Therese. So, Shay, why don't you go ahead and give us the first suggestion that people can look forward to in the Twitter poll that they will vote for to see what is the next Geek News Movie Night.
So, the movie that I decided to choose was Hidden Figures.
All right.
Is the movie that I decided to go with.
Okay. So we have Hidden Figures. I actually don't know a whole lot on that film. Let me see if I can dig some stuff out so that people at least have some kind of a grasp of like who's in it, things like that. So here we go. Hidden Figures. 2016, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this one I do actually know, and I haven't seen it, so I'm actually kind of glad you suggested it. So this is the because I think it got somewhat dwarfed by the movie based on Apollo 11 that happened as well. And so this is the story of the team of female African-American mathematicians who served a vital role in NASA during the early years of the U.S. space program. I've been wanting to see this, actually, because it looked really, really interesting. Yeah. So, Hidden Figures, that's a good pick right off the bat. And so, here's the thing, though. Technically, last week, we were supposed to have another pick given by me. And so, unfortunately, because of sick kids, I was not able to construct it in time. And considering I had a couple of picks that I thought would have been amazing to be able to do. And so I'm happy to say that I have finally picked out a movie for it. I'm not remembering the exact title, but my pick is, I think it's either The Finest or The Darkest Hour, and that is basically what I brought up earlier tonight. It stars Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill as he is dealing with the oncoming pressure that is coming from the Nazis in World War II and having to lead England during that time, as well as having events like Dunkirk happening in the process. In fact, the main reason I kind of picked this was both me and Alex really like Dunkirk. I am officially going to say that I like this movie better than Dunkirk, and it's just because it gives a different perspective, one that I liked following. So there you go. Mine is, I believe it's The Darkest Hours is what it's called.
Darkest Hour.
Darkest Hour. Okay. So that's our picks. We have Hidden Figures and Darkest Hour that are going to go up on the Twitter feed, which you guys will vote for, and then we will watch it together and give our thoughts on whatever movie is picked. And next week, we will probably do Stephen Romney. He is the last one that we will have. And then finally, the reigning champion will give us his pick for that. And then it's off to the races, everybody.
Yeah.
Then we will all gather once again for an RSS exclusive episode of Geek News Movie Night. Sorry, guys, but that's a thing. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us tonight. So if people want to be able to reach out to us, to be able to see the content that we provide, be able to ask us questions on the stuff that we cover tonight, or maybe just stuff we didn't cover, Shay Therese, since you are the special guest tonight, how do people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on Twitter, which my Twitter handle is Shay_, and also on YouTube, which is also youtube.com/ShayTherese.
All right, and I actually will also give a plug to your channel as well, because even though I'm usually there for the Motivational Mondays, especially during these months, because I really do kind of need that motivation, especially on days where it's like, dang it, I was doing so well. I also have very much been enjoying the recent segment of Nerd News, being able to see your take on the stories of the given week and being able to have at least another perspective to go on for this podcast. So I will give you a plug for Nerd News as well.
Thank you.
All right. And Alex, the Shadow Blazer, how do people get a hold of you?
I am on YouTube. Shadow Blazer 3000 is my channel, and I do anime content. I'm going to have to probably kind of tweak one of my recent videos, because apparently Toho decided to uphold their block, even though they let a whole month pass to finally do it. So I need to do a little quick edit, because, 45 seconds is so detrimental to their business.
So offensive. So offensive.
So, yes, look for that. I'll have a little quick re-edit of one of my recent videos up. So, yeah, and follow me on Twitter. I'm on there. I always blast out new videos when I post them at AlexJShort.
All right. And Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle on Facebook, YouTube, and most recently, SoundCloud. I'll actually be uploading a video in the near future explaining what's going to happen with SoundCloud. So if you want to see the content that is basically what I do my due diligence on, the stuff that my Patreon goes to fund, those are where you can find it. If you want to see a more personal side of me where I upload, photos of cats, pictures of food that I cook, random Nintendo Switch video game tidbits, followed by more cats, and the occasional doodle, you can follow me on Instagram at RomneyDoesArt. Yes, the username is no longer a lie. I did post a drawing, and technically a painting.
He's no longer lying, everybody. We can all feel proud for him.
Yes, I did technically upload a painting. That was the first thing I uploaded on Instagram. Problem is, like most other things, no one ever saw it. But if you want to actually engage with me directly, send me stories, ask for my opinion. Seriously, Adam has 2 kids. Let's give the guy a break. I mean, I won't bite, not even if you ask me to, because I'm not into that sort of thing. You can reach out to me.
Not only because I also am dealing with my kid's cold. Please do that.
Yes, so you can reach out to me directly at Romney Reviews on Twitter. And as for this week's Romney Reading Club, I'm going to keep it short since we are over time. I'm going to recommend the second book that I finished this year. If you've been following me on Instagram, you've probably been seeing my book reviews. And that is a series of essays titled Tai Chi Chuan, The Martial Side by Michael Babon. I'm guessing the French pronunciation because the author is from Canada. It's a series of essays that kind of go into the more combative side of Tai Chi, a side of that style that most people don't really think about, since most people usually associate Tai Chi with the New Age movement. And so that is this week's recommendation for Romney's Reading Club. If you're following my Twitter, I'll link you to the Goodreads page that actually includes an actual review written by yours truly.
All right. And if people want to be able to get a hold of me, the best places to do so, if you want to be able to ask those questions, is on my Twitter, which is at Drak2326. I promise I will get to you as quick as I am able to, but keep in mind, as Romney said, I have 2 kids. They're sick right now. I'm kind of sick because I've been taking care of them, so I might get back to you a little bit later. And then also, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Drak2326, where everybody here can attest to the fact that I pretty much just put up pictures of my kids, random geek memes that I really enjoy. I'm actually starting to put plugs into my live streams, as well as to when we're doing the podcast live, so you guys can look forward to all of that. And some people will probably get mad at me because I'm constantly advertising again. I don't know. That might happen. But if you want to be able to support the podcast directly, the first thing that we would bring up is that you guys can watch us live on YouTube. Holy crap! You guys can join us every Friday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and we will be doing the week's events in Geek live as a recording for you guys. Sometimes we're a little delayed on it, sometimes we're not, and we will keep you guys apprised of that situation as it follows. But we can also ask that you support the RSS feed, which is geekynro.libsyn.com, where you will get tons of content that doesn't even get provided on YouTube. You will get Geek News Movie Night. You will get Geek News Theater. We're also talking about doing Geek News Game Talk eventually, Geek News Movie Talk, being able to talk about so many things in a roundtable kind of deal that we just can't do on the regular podcast. So please subscribe to that RSS feed because you will get so much more out of it, in my opinion. You can also follow the podcast on social media at Twitter and Facebook under the exact same tagline, Geeky NRO, where you will get up-to-the-minute information on when we're going to be broadcasting the stories we might be broadcasting out, maybe even stories that didn't make the agenda. I'd love to be able to get you guys' opinions on them. And finally, if you want to be able to ask questions or be able to give feedback on the podcast, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. First of all, thank you so much to Shay Turi for joining us once again as we talked about another silly week in the Week of Geeks. We had lots. We actually got really deep in this podcast. I'm actually very happy about it, but also kind of weirded out because we got deep about stuff that wasn't even about the stories.
Yeah.
That happens.
That's okay.
That's
Yeah.
okay. We're all right with it. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate you guys continuing to support the podcast. Once again, thank you to Shay Turi. And now, for me, for Alex, for Romney, and for Shay, we will see you guys next time.